Hey friends, welcome to Huge Head Studio. My name is Robbie and I like to sculpt and paint. And recently I decided I wanted to decorate my wall with some mounted pop culture heads because why not? So I'm going to sculpt this mounted head of Frankenstein's monster. We start with some armature wire that I twisted together for extra strength, and then slap some aluminum foil on, and with the magic of editing, it's instantly a block that'll serve as our base. Next, we flatten a bit of polymer clay and give it another magical poof to cover the foil and squish it into the basic shape of our monster's blocky head. Right now, with his flat face and droopy chin, he looks like the Crimson Chin if he ran into a wall, so we're adding a few rolls of clay to shape out the jaw a little bit. I also tossed on this little neck burger to fill the gap, bent the wire into kind of a neck shape, and then figured out where I needed the hole to go on the mounting block. And that neck wire is definitely strong enough to hold the weight. There's absolutely not a random screw drilled into the back of his head, keeping it all together. Next, I start mapping out the face to give future me an idea of what goes where, because even though Frankie's monster isn't exactly a looker, we still need his features in the right places, otherwise we'll end up with Sloth from the Goonies, and that's a project for another day. After poking some eye holes into the somewhat correctish area, I carve out his cheeks a bit because let's be honest, you don't get full cheeks when you're made of spare parts. I use this little carving tool to scoop out some volume and then smooth it over with a ball tool to make it less chunky. While making the eye holes, I got a little heavy-handed and bottomed out all the way to the aluminum, but that's alright because depth is character. Or whatever. Anyway, I packed a little clay back into the sockets before gently and delicately shoving in some pre-baked eyeballs. Next, I start laying in some cheekbones and jowls, which are important features when you're going for that awkward balance of freshly dug up but slightly photogenic. We continue that vibe with the eyelids. The eyes are kind of the emotional anchor of the whole thing. They define whether he looks menacing, sad, or like he just woke up in a lab again. I'm going for that droopy, half-asleep vibe, kind of like that baseball kid from Meet the Robinsons if he spent a few nights in a crypt. Once we added the nose, we realized we veered off course. Less Frankenstein's monster, more sexy Squidward. It happens to the best of us, but I reshaped the nose, poked in a couple nosy holes, thought I'd recovered, and then gave the mouth some volume, only to end up with Homer Simpson, so we're just collecting cartoon cameos at this point. But if there's one thing that can save this build, it's that big old brow and forehead. So I added some Twinkie-shaped and snake-shaped rolls of clay and smoothed them all out to help out with the profile a bit. For his mouth, I'm going for an underbit sling blade. Kind of look a little crooked, deep corners sinking into the jowls. This mouth's secondhand, so it's not exactly fresh off the lot. The intended expression is a Carl Childers Mona Lisa kind of smile vibe that makes a quiet menace and a little tragic mystery. Next, it's time to rough him up a little. I start carving a few cuts and gashes into his face, nothing too crazy. Just enough to suggest where Victor may have cracked him open a few times to, check under the hood. And honestly, it's an odd but satisfying process though, kind of like a twisted little craft show project, something like Martha Stewart Living if it were guest hosted by Ed Gein. And kind of like Gein's projects, our subject is made of literal dead skin, so we definitely can't leave him looking like an Insta skinfluencer. I'm pretty sure getting shocked to life by lightning isn't great for your complexion either. So to rough up the face, I wrap it in some thin plastic which helps me score in some wrinkles without leaving any hard edges. After that, I grab an old dried out paintbrush and start poking at the clay, adding skin texture and just little imperfections. Then I brush on a little alcohol to smooth out these new textures and make it all a little bit more believable. To keep the wounds together, we need to make some staples, so let's use the magic of editing and corny sound effects to flatten a piece of clay into a strip and shake it up into a handful of staples. Alright, how about that? Anyway, once the staples are baked, I squish them across the wounds randomly here and there because even though Victor had the ambition to create life, he apparently lacked the patience to staple consistently. Some are aligned, some are a disaster, but really it's just like the monster version of a kid gluing popsicle sticks together. Once all the cuts, scars, and lovely skin texture are in place, it's time for the first bake. So we put our monster head in the kitchen oven, which is totally normal and easy to explain to your significant other when they come down to your studio and ask what the f is in the oven. After the face is baked, I start adding this ridiculous neck, and I didn't really plan how a humanoid neck would look if attached to a trophy mount, and it's really giving off this super torqued bearskin rug vibe. It looks really dumb, and I'm quite pleased with it. Next, I squish on some clay balls into ear-like shapes and press them onto the head. And also, ears are really weird. You never really think about it until you're trying to figure out how to sculpt them, that they're just like weird little skin-colored, slightly unraveled smushed cinnamon rolls. But the face also looks really weird without them, so on they go. Off camera, I added some skin texture on top of the staples to make them look a little bit more embedded and then gave it another bake. I don't want a bald monster, so I need to add some hair. Even though this is my take on the monster, I'm still going for more of a Boris Karloff version instead of the OG noseless long-haired monster from the book. So I'm going to give him that classic stringy old yee hillbilly undercut. Finally, all that's left is the bolts. I drilled some holes in the neck for the armature wire and pre-baked some tubes on a different piece of wire so they'd have a hole in the middle to fit onto the wire in the neck. I cut them with my nifty little Temu saw blade before gluing them into place with some bacon bond. After that, we just need one final bake and we're ready for paint. I had planned on keeping this Sculpty beige skin tone, but I let his nose get a little too burnt in the oven, and now he looks like the kid in the Puffs Plus tissue commercial. So instead we're going to go with the classic sickly rotting green and pretend that that was the motive all along, because we are an artist and artists never make mistakes. I darken his eyes a bit to give him that my parents don't understand me look, then dab some discoloration with a sponge to make it look sickly and bruised. As we said before, the skin is on its second owner, so it needs to look lived in. His face was looking a little too shiny, so I dabbed on some yellowish pan pastels to dull it up a bit. I then brushed on some red pan pastels around his wounds to show signs of irritation from his face being literally stapled together. Next, I let my lack of attention span show and start jumping around from place to place, too impatient to wait for the paint to dry. So while waiting for the not-so-whites of his eyes to dry, I move on to filling in the wounds with a darker crimson to give them some depth. Next, I remove the liquid mask that I applied earlier off screen. This mask protected the staples from all the texture layers that I added to the wounds. I'm going to paint them anyway, but I didn't want the pan pastels making the staples look too chunky. Once the mask is off, I give all the staples a black base layer, which will make the metallic paint we apply shortly really pop. While the black layer dries, I go back to the eyes to make them look used. Like they've seen some and they really don't care to see much more. I add in the pupils to make him look just slightly less dead, and then dab in some blues to suggest that his eyes have clouded over with cataracts, so he's alive-ish, but definitely not getting any younger. Now that the black layer has dried, I apply a coat of shiny metallic steel paint to the staples and neck bolts. Then I age the steel a bit with washes of grimy browns, adding hints of red rust here and there because I'm pretty sure human fluids aren't exactly great for long-term metal preservation. After that, all that's left is the hair, so I start with a simple layer of black, then lightly dry brush on some slightly lighter grays to give it a bit of variety and dimension without making it look like a goth wig. At this point I am lazy and did not come up with any ideas, so I apply a simple layer of black paint before attaching the monster back onto his mouth. Finally, I dab on a light layer of UV resin to his eyes to suggest a bit of moisture. And once they're cured, that's it. Monster complete. And there we go, Frankenstein's monster, fully mounted, textured, and glaring at me. So yeah, subscribe or whatever if you want to keep an eye out for the next video to see if we create another monster or just another huge head of some sort. That's it today, thanks for watching, keep it weird, and stay creative.